Hey, hi, and hello, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. You know who it is. I want to come through here and do a quick, effective little tier list on a discography that is not very long, but in my opinion, still important, a band that you guys should absolutely positively be listening to. They're one of my favorites, even at a young age. That would be Rage Against the Machine, a rap metal quartet from California that I dare say is the best the genre ever had to offer. Were they not to exist, what would the point of rapping in metal even be? That is how strongly I feel about their catalog, even if, again, there aren't a whole lot of albums in it. Nonetheless, though, let's start off with the band's debut, self-titled 1992 album. It's incredible that Rage Against the Machine came to us in so many ways like a fully formed band. They were not one of these groups that it took like 3, 4, 5 albums to really kind of hit their stride and find their sound. No, they knew exactly what they were and what they wanted to do out of the gate. All over this record, you have drum beats that fuse together the worlds of rock and hip hop. Tom Morello's guitar work, of course, even at this point in this early stage in the band's career, was groundbreaking, experimental, and wholly unique, making use of some really noisy and weird tricks and effects that he would expand upon on the band's next record. I mean, there are so many riffs and guitar bits on this record that don't even necessarily sound like guitar. And then finally, you have Zach, the prime vocalist and lyricist of the group, who, for many fans, was obviously the prime driver of Rage Against the Machine's radical politics, as they pretty much pulled no punches when it came to calling out the corrupt government, the FBI, racist police officers, authoritarianism and fascism, unequal power imbalances and oppressive hierarchies of political control. The messaging on this record was grim, was aggressive, was in your face, was cynical toward the American dream and the idea of freedom in this country. They took American politics to task in a way that was rare at this level of mainstream exposure, given just how bold the band was about it. Now, I will say this, though. I think this is a great record. I love this record. I highly recommend this record. However, I wouldn't necessarily say it's like a perfect album or anything like that. There are some tracks and passages that I think drag on a little bit. Some of Zach's lyricism can get a little repetitive here and there and feel a bit more like, you know, general sloganeering versus some of the more pointed social critiques that he would go on to make on later Rage projects. And I'll get into other various things I think the band improved upon from here, but very solidly I would put this record in the A row. Now, several years later, we are presented with the sophomore record from Rage Against the Machine. That would be Evil Empire, their 1996 album. I love this album. This album is incredible to me. Features the band's best single ever, in my opinion, Bulls on Parade. And as I was alluding to earlier, so many things about Rage's politics, their lyrics, Tom Morello's guitar work, also the meld between Tim's bass and Brad's drums. All of these things would be improved upon with this record. Whether you're talking about Without a Face or Vietnam or People of the Sun, Zach was getting way more pointed in his political and social references. Many of the songs on this record are kind of like these little breadcrumb trails to a very radical leftist politics, which, again, I think it was just a lot more effective pulling together on this record. Not to mention a lot of the imagery that he worked into these songs, just being much more grim and urgent, whether it's refrains of Rally Around the Family with a Pocket Full of Shells, or images of Dachau on the closing track, Year of the Boomerang. Tom Morello's guitar work, as I was saying earlier, like really is mind-blowing on this LP. Whether he is pulling together what sounds like, you know, a DJ scratch solo on Bulls on Parade, or some super crazy psychedelic washes of echo and who knows what else, sounding like an insane acid-drenched Jimmy Page at some points. But yeah, from Zeppelin to West Coast gangster rap, Rage Against the Machine was doing a much better job on this record of like emulating various shades of hip-hop and rock and melding them together in a way that just felt seamless and really specific to them. Zach's flows and general rapping ability certainly increased on this record as well. Not to mention his just throat-shredding screams gave the band a reputation for just like being that band that was the loudest and, you know, the screamiest in the mainstream. Like, there's a reason Eminem had that bar, you know, I'm like on stage screaming like Rage Against the Machine. There were just few bands at this level of mainstream exposure at that time that were like, like bringing that heat in the way that Rage was. Now, of course, like the rise of nu metal down the road would kind of go to, shift those tectonic plates. But, for the time that they were around and had the spotlight in the way that they did, Rage was that band, really living up to their name in more ways than one. This record, again, is incredible, is mind-blowing. I think possibly the best fusion of rap and metal out there, point blank period. I would put this in the S row. Okay, this brings us to the band's third full-length LP, their 1999 album, The Battle of Los Angeles. Very good album, in my opinion, but not as good as it could have or should have been. One would think after such an excellent Grammy-nominated release, such as Evil Empire, that, it would pretty much be in the bag for Rage, and that they would have, like, many more albums to come from here. Sadly, it did not really pan out that way, and, retrospectively, maybe The Battle of Los Angeles was kind of, showing the writing on the wall, not to get too literal here. But look, there's some great tracks and highlights on this LP for sure. Stellar closer with War Within a Breath, Testify, strong opener, also one of the better singles in the band's catalog, Sleep Now in the Fire. Guerrilla Radio, a little repetitive, but still not a terrible single by any means. I think there was just something missing from this record. A lot of the rockier cuts on this thing didn't go quite as hard as they did on Evil Empire, and going deeper into the album with tracks like Calm Like a Bomb, for example, while there was rock instrumentation at the core of these tracks, they were very much produced like hip-hop songs, between the sequenced beats and Tom's guitars sounding less live and more like they were just kind of being sampled and looped throughout a lot of these tracks. And then on top of that, you had all of this layering upon layering upon layering going on in these mixes that made the songs just sound unnecessarily maximal, especially with Rage already being a pretty damn loud and bold band. It's through borderline overproducing a lot of the tracks on this record that I think Rage really started to lose their sound a little bit. It's for sure an album I could see making some creative differences within the band, which is why I'm going to take it and put it in the B row. I think it's okay. I think it's all right. It's got some flaws. It's got some shortcomings. It's far from their best, but still decent, listenable, and some good highlights on it. Which brings us to the final Rage Against the Machine album, the 2000 LP Renegades, a record that the band obviously kind of pooped out within a year's time. And this album pretty much spelled the beginning of the end for the band, while they did have some highlights on this thing that popped off radio-wise, like Renegades of Funk. This album is pretty much just a covers record, maybe to fulfill a contractual obligation or something like that. Yeah, it's pretty much the band covering everything from Africa Bambaataa to Eric B. and Rakim, also Bob Dylan, also Cypress Hill. These covers kind of range in quality. Despite being the best out there to fuse together elements of rap and metal, they really kind of fail to effectively take some of these classic hip-hop songs and make them work in a metal context. I do have to give this thing at least some credit because their cover of Devo's Beautiful World is like one of the weirdest crossovers in rock music history, and I'm glad it happened. And while in one breath it is really cool to hear one of the most unique bands in mainstream rock embrace their very interesting and very versatile array of influences, there's still something about the execution on these tracks that feels sort of off. Yeah, I'm going to take this one and put it over in the C row. And that's going to do it for this Rage Against the Machine tier list. Yeah! Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you guys would do in terms of like placing these records in a tier list. Over here next to my head is another one you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Rage Against the Machine, forever.